Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, your host, editor, and publisher of Native News Online. Shane Balkowitsch is on a mission, gentleman out of Bismarck, North Dakota. A mission to photograph 1,000 Native Americans for a decade-long series called Northern Plains Native Americans, a modern wet plate perspective. His work came to our attention recently when he photographed iconic figure Leonard Peltier. Joining us today is Shane, and welcome to Native Bidaské. Shane, how are you today?
I'm really good, Levi. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, our pleasure. And we really want to highlight, the visit you had with Leonard. But before we get going on that, you use a method of photography, wet plate photography, that was widely used during the 1800s.
Correct.
I'm sure most of our viewers don't have any clue what that is. So if you don't mind, spend some time telling us what that is.
Sure. So in 1851, Frederick Scott Archer invented the wet plate collodion processes, which I'm practicing. So you have to understand those first photographs that came back from the frontier of Native Americans that went back east. Those would have been wet plate collodion photographs. One of the first photographs of Abraham Lincoln was a wet plate collodion photograph. What's really interesting about where I'm at and me practicing this process, this historic 174-year-old process here in Bismarck, is that none other than Sitting Bull had his portrait taken in 1851 by a photographer here in Bismarck by the name of Orlando Scott Goff. So these images are analog photographs, and what's beautiful about them is that they're made out of pure silver on glass. So silver doesn't degrade. It'll be here 1,000 years from now. And I've been on this journey ever since I met Ernie LaPointe, the great-grandson of Sitting Bull, and took his portrait. He was my first ever Native American friend. And I shared that online, and I just started on this path of photographing Native Americans. The series is curated, so the plates are protected at the State Historical Society of North Dakota at the Heritage Center here in Bismarck. So when I make a plate, within a couple of weeks, the plates go up to the Heritage Center. They're put in acid-free sleeves, and they're indexed, and they're put on the shelf for future generations to enjoy. But this was 1838 was the first time that we were able to even take photographs of people. So this came about in 1851, and it was very, very unique. We really didn't have ways of taking photographs before. And maybe some of your listeners have heard of tintypes before. Levi, this is the same exact process as a tintype. I just happen to be an ambrotypist. That means I make my images on black glass instead of on a piece of metal. So if people know what a tintype is, this is the same process as that. And this process went from 1851 till about 1885, and it fell out of favor for something more convenient and a little bit less expensive to make.
Mm-hmm. And your work actually has been picked up by the Library of Congress and other museums. I read some articles since you and I talked last weekend, actually. But
I have
a good following out there, man. Good.
Yeah, as of a couple of weeks ago, I have 100 museums around the world that are curating my work. So Library of Congress, the Smithsonian, the Heard Museum. I've got a bunch of museums over in Europe and stuff. So there's 100 different museums. I got a lot of Native American museums have picked up my work over the years. So it's been my mission to donate these works to these different museums, because when you make an object that's going to be here hundreds of years after you're gone, it doesn't do me any good to be here with me. It needs to be somewhere where it's going to be protected, and that's really why I'm trying to do this, and to know that I have 100 different museums around the world that have my work. It's a huge honor, and it's something I don't take lightly.
Yeah, and we published the photographs that you did of Leonard over this past weekend. I think it was Sunday evening, and this week it's our best, most read story so far. And hey, talk about the black and white. I've always been a really admirer of black and white photography. Why do you think is the shadows, or why is black and white, even though we have color?
Yeah.
Why is it so significant? Why is it
black and white? Black and white's king. Silver doesn't have any colors in it, so it's not like I have a choice. It's not like I can make a wet plate in color for somehow. So the technology is limited to color, and color photography did not come around to the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, they were experimenting, but it wasn't until like the 50s and 60s that color photography really took off. There's just something, there's something true about less is more, I think, is really what I like about it. It's about the depth and the shadows and the tonality. So when we talk about prints and photographs, it's always about tonality. So we're looking to try to find the greatest width between the brightest white and the darkest black. So we want a portrait in general to have really dark blacks and really whites, and we try to hit every range in between. And I'm not sure. It's just there's something romantic about black and whites, and maybe it goes back to the first photographs, just like my process and the daguerreotype process and the print processes of the Victorian era. None of them are in color, so maybe it's that romantic notion as well that kind of works in our psyche. But I always prefer a black and white portrait or print over something that's in color. So you can see color every day with your eyes.
Yes.
There's something when you're looking at a black and white, there's just something different there. And I've always gravitated towards black and white photographs.
Yeah. I these days with your phone, you can get in there and change things to black and white. I have done that just to be consistent with some family photos, right, from early 1900s of my great grandfather and my grandfather. Yeah, so I just think black and white is just so powerful.
There's an honesty too to these analog photographs, Levi. There's an honesty. Okay, they don't have filters. There's no filters. So these are true photographs. You're bouncing light off the subject's face. I bounced the light off Leonard's face, and it activated some silver on the back of this glass on my camera. Wow. And there's just something about that speaks the truth. When you pick up your iPhone and you can change things all you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have said this in the past, and I'm a journalist. I would not call myself a photojournalist. However, we're such a small outfit that I have to take photos, which I have come to really enjoy doing. And one thing I have said is Native Americans really are photogenic. I mean, and then some of the locales where we are, you go to the Navajo Nation.
Yeah.
Man,
you add that on top and it becomes layers, right?
Yes. And so actually you can have a lot of fun with it, especially in Indian country. But we'll get to your series, but I really want to zero in on Leonard. Now, Leonard was granted clemency by former President Biden.
Yep.
One of the last official acts he did as president, and Leonard had to remain in the prison for like another 30 days or thereabouts. So he was released mid February, and so
he wasn't pardoned, though. That's important. Like some people think he was pardoned.
He was not pardoned. He was
clemency. So essentially, technically, he's serving the rest of his jail time at his house.
Now I understand that he has, he's under house confinement, as Holly McCarroll tells me. But he's able, for ceremonial purposes, sometimes to go away where some of the traditionals are performing the ceremonies, and then in this case you were able to photograph him away from his home, but up at the tribal casino. Is that correct? That's
correct. Yeah. So they had to get permission, from what I understand. They had to get permission for him to come over and see me. So I just couldn't set my lights, and this process is very difficult. So I have to have a darkroom with me. So I have a portable darkroom. I have to climb into this little box, and I had to have all my chemistry, and the water had to be specific water, and wow. The silver nitrate and collodion and developer and fixer, and had to have all my trays and everything. So, I didn't know, you usually can't set that up in someone's house, even my own house. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go to his residence and set up all this stuff. So what I did is I just we rented a room at the casino, and the casino was absolutely fabulous to us when we showed up there. And with that, and you show up 3 hours early, and you can make a makeshift studio. So I set up the lights and set up all the dark room and got all the chemistry ready. So I was plenty prepared by the time that I got Leonard walked through the door. So I essentially made a makeshift studio just, a couple hundred miles away from my normal studio. And you forget one thing, Levi. If you forget a bottle of chemistry, or you drop a bottle of chemistry and it breaks, or you spill something, or you forgot a plate holder, or you forgot your lens or something like that, all these things would have totally messed me up on the day of the shoot. So there's this checklist that I go through, and I got to make sure everything's, because if I'm missing any one of these elements, and there's 100 elements, if I'm missing any one of them, I'm standing in front of Leonard Peltier with this opportunity. And they told me that I could have 2 hours with him. He ended up spending 4 hours with me. And then we went out we got to have a meal together afterwards. But if I would have forgot any of that stuff, a portrait wouldn't be taken, and that would be devastating for me as a photographer. So yeah, there's a little bit of a stress involved going remotely, away from the comforts of my studio here. I mean, it would have been perfect scenario for Leonard to come to my studio and use the natural light, and I have everything here and all my resources, but it just wasn't the case. Leonard, he has to stay there on the reservation, and I'm going to take this opportunity. When Deb Hallen calls you on the phone and says you have to do something for me, and her and I are really close. I photographed her years ago. She actually flew in for my first book signing for the series and spoke at the State Historical Society on my behalf. It was fantastic. We had hundreds of people from all over the place came in to see Deb Hallen, and she came in and spent the weekend with me, and I took her portrait. And when she calls me and says, you have to do something, I said, what is it, Deb? And she says, well, you need to photograph Leonard Peltier. There was no way that I wasn't going to do that for her and do it for my friends. Like when and I've told the story already, when he first got out, I was just barraged with text messages, phone calls, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, everyone saying, even on my own post, people were just posting, when are you going to get photographed Leonard? When are you going to photograph Leonard? Because they all know I'm here in Bismarck, and they know that, Leonard's going to be just a couple hundred miles north of here. And it's like, I don't have any access to Mr. Peltier. Not that I wouldn't want to do it. And then that fateful day, Deb Hallen, called me. And I should tell you, I'd like to tell you this story, if you don't mind, Levi. I had sent a copy of my book to Leonard at Leavenworth every time a book came out. So there's 3 copies. I'd send it to him. Volume 1 came out. I thought, well, I should send one to Leonard. So I knew he was there. Or I thought he was there. I insinuated he was there. That's what everything online was telling me where he's at. I sent my book. They sent it back in this package that said this inmate cannot accept this, or something like that. So the second book come out. I sent it to Leonard. It came back with the same kind of message, same kind of note. The third book came out. I sent it. It came back. So when Leonard did get out, I sent my books up to him. And this was about 10 days after he was out, and my phone rang. And it was his sister and Mr. Peltier on the phone, and he just wanted to thank me for the books. And I told him, well, Deb's asked me to take your photograph, and he was very excited about it. And the rest is history. And I told him, I've been trying to get my books to you for years, Leonard, and with no success. And he finally got them. And he called me on the phone, which was, you can imagine how surreal that is. The man's been in prison for 49 years, and then within a week or so of being out, he's on the phone with me, and we're talking about me taking his portrait. So, I've been at this for 12 years. Leonard was my 862nd Native American portrait that I'd taken for this series. And I'd always been, Levi, serious about this series. Like, I was always dedicated to it. But Calvin Goodnell, the Hidatsa elder, had a naming ceremony for me about 7 years ago in the studio, and with witnesses, exchanging of gifts. And when he gave me the name Shadowcatcher in Hidatsa, Mishte Ekagoche, and I'm probably destroying that name as bad as you destroyed the pronunciation of my last name.
I'm sorry, sir.
but no, I'm teasing you. I'm teasing
Okay.
you. I'm teasing you. So I'm Shadowcatcher, and at that moment, this was it was the largest honor, Levi, of my life. To receive that name from Calvin. And then all of a sudden, I just could not let these people that have been coming into my studio, as far as from people have flown in from Florida to have their portrait taken for the series. So I just, at that point, there was something concrete about the fact that I got that name, and that I now cannot let my brothers and sisters down. And I've just been doing my best. When Deb called me, there was no doubt that I was getting my stuff ready, and I'm just going to go see Mr. Peltier.
Yeah. And Secretary Holland is just a totally amazing woman.
She's fantastic.
And, I have been in my conversation. I just got back from a national conference out in San Diego, and quite a few people. We sure miss Deb Holland because what's going on in D.C. and that's a whole different thing. We don't need to go on that rabbit hole right now.
But she's running for governor, so
she is running for governor.
And my wet plate's on her poster. So one of her posters.
What I like about it is she is always been this. She's always shown herself to be a very caring person, and the idea that she let you know you need to capture Leonard's photographs is just downright amazing.
She was on the phone during.
She's always thinking about everybody else, right? So that's great. Yeah.
She was on the phone during the portrait session. We were texting back and forth, and so she was giving. Holly would make a behind the scenes photograph, and then send it to Deb, and she'd say, "Oh, Deb said this," and so if Deb was in the room, and she's a very busy lady. Like it doesn't.
She is.
You don't take this for granted that Deb's taking time out of her busy schedule and all that she's trying to be governor, right? Yeah. And here she is taking time out to ask me to do this, and then on the day of the shoot, she's corresponding with us real time while I'm making these pictures. Deb was right there next to us in spirit.
And I've always said that the great people they know how to make time for the important things. And Deb Holland is one of those. She's one of those individuals. She's a great person.
Absolutely. Really, I will do anything for her.
Hey, tell me. And I get about periodically once, twice a week. Through the years, Native News Online has covered a lot of Leonard Peltier stories, and I personally have written probably 10 or 15 editorials, opinion pieces asking for his release.
Right.
And people ask me, how is Leonard? Tell me this. You were with him last week? How is Leonard?
I'm a nurse, so I think I can have a little bit of a say in how Leonard is physically. He's an 80-year-old man who's I think he's doing just great. I mean, for his age and what he's been through, he came in and he's humble and he's kind and he's generous. I mean, generous with his time, right? Like he promised this complete stranger who I was 2 hours, which is generous to begin with.
Yeah.
And then he decides to do 4 hours and 7 portraits. Like, come on, Leonard. I mean, Leonard could have, like Sitting Bull, when Sitting Bull came into Orlando Scott Goff's studio here in Bismarck, North Dakota, Orlando Scott Goff, Sitting Bull came in. He paid Sitting Bull $50, which is about $1,800 in today's money. And Sitting Bull came in, sat down. He took the lens cap off, took the picture. Sitting Bull stood up. This is reported in the Bismarck Tribune. It was a 52-second exposure. Sitting Bull stood up and walked out the door. I mean, that's what Sitting Bull gave Goff. And here I have Mr. Peltier giving me 4 hours of time. And then at the end of the day, we were all in such high spirits because we really witnessed everyone that was there. His family was there, and there's people that cared about him. We had people from the tribe were there. Chairman Azur made sure that we were well taken care of, and we were treated like kings that day. All of us, Leonard and my whole, me and Chad Nodland, who was my digital photographer that went in to capture everything. And then at the end of the day, Leonard says, "Well, we're going to dinner, Shane. You're going with us." So we went to dinner and had a bite to eat. And then we had to it was an 18-hour day for me and Chad. We started out at 5:30 in the morning, and we didn't get back to like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. But what was in the car?
You sound like you're a journalist, man. That's how. Sounds like some of my days, man.
But at the end of the day, I was driving home with these 7 black glass ambrotypes, the only 7 photographs of Leonard Peltier in the world. And then within 18 hours, the Library of Congress picks up one of the photos and says, "We'll take it." And then the Smithsonian, and then North Dakota's Historical Society, which I knew was going to take one because that's part of my series. South Dakota decided they wanted one. Then the Heard Museum decided that they wanted one. And then the Pitts Rivers Museum. But the coup de grace at the end of it all is like all these fantastic United States museums took these portraits, the actual glass plates. This isn't prints or anything. They are physically taking these into their possessions after I get them finished here and varnished and labeled. And then the Pitts Rivers Museum at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom, I will hand deliver the 6th plate to them in August when I go and speak there.
Well, that's fantastic.
So I mean, I thought it was really a cool idea. Like maybe Leonard stuck here on the reservation, right? But Leonard's plate can make it all the way to Europe. And that
the thing is, Leonard has become such an iconic figure. And unfortunately, and this is something that the longer I work in journalism, the more I realize that it's so important to pass information from one generation to the next. And we Native Americans, we talk about our 7 generations. And what you're able to do with these plates is really, like you said, get it around the world. There was a point I read somewhere recently that Leonard was more famous outside of the United States than he was inside the United States. So he's a worldwide figure. And so
I believe that
he's so iconic. And so I love the idea. And that's one of the reasons we, not to get mushy or real sentimental, but
it's hard not to. It's hard not to.
He's probably the most iconic figure we have in Indian country alive today.
Since Sitting Bull. I said
Deb Holland, but Deb would probably say, Leonard was at it longer than me, 49 years.
Who has that under his belt, right? Like I said that to the Fargo Forum. I said, I can't think of a more iconic figure than Leonard. Sitting Bull was the last, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Real, I think, give me a name. I mean, I can't think of anyone. And
I was friends with Dennis Banks, and when he passed, he was one of the co-founders of the American Indian movement.
Yep.
And of course, I knew Clyde, and I just know some of these AIM people. But Leonard he's still with us, and I as somebody as old as I am, I just value that, and so I hope to interview him soon, and I got to work through Holly. But I just think that for history's sake, we need to really capture this. And so I applaud what you're doing. One thing I found too is when maybe it's a Native thing. We're going to test you right now, Shane.
Sure.
But when I meet people, I can feel their presence, and I have met some figures, a former AIM meeting. Person, a leader. When I shook his hand, I felt anger. Okay. And then I went with the Lakota woman. I felt just sheer sadness. It was like a shadow of sadness was all around her. But when I met Leonard real briefly, the day after he was released and he was at the casino, I felt a sense of serenity.
He's something else.
I've been telling people that. I said, for a man that's been confined for 49 years, the fact that he's at peace with himself is pretty significant.
It's amazing to see, and it's really amazing to see, and to come out the other side of that with a sense of humor. I have no idea how he did it. We were joking all day, the whole time we were together.
Hey brother, that's what keeps we Native people alive, is our humor. Indian humor, as we call it, it keeps us. I guess it's part of our survival mechanism.
Mr. Peltier's sense of humor is intact.
That's great. I can't wait to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah.
But hey, now you mentioned you actually took photographs of Secretary Holland and also Billy Mills. Billy's a friend of mine. How about Billy Mills? How was that experience?
Well, that was amazing as well. So Billy, everyone, again, I kept getting these messages. When are you going to photograph Billy Mills? I'm like, I don't know how to get a hold of Billy Mills. So, so he was coming through North Dakota, and I got wind of this. So I reached out to his wife, and she's the sweetest thing you're ever going to meet.
Oh yes, Pat.
And Pat's just unbelievable, and it's amazing. Like, I keep in contact with Deb Haaland and Pat and Billy. I mean, once a month we're messaging back and forth, and they, Billy's always commenting on my stuff online. It's like, Billy, you got to have something better to do than just message me. So he couldn't get into Bismarck. So what was really cool about that is that he could only get into Fargo. I said, well, that's not going to stop me, right? Like, there's no way, Levi, that I'm going to go to Fargo and pick up Billy. So me and my family got in our car. We met Billy and Pat, and they were at a restaurant, and they come on out, they jump in our car. We spent 2.5 hours coming back to Bismarck. And in the back of the car, Billy's telling me the moment, like the story of the race, like, he's going into detail. And as soon as he started on this, it was like, hold on a moment. Billy, do you mind if I grab my phone and record you? And he says, no, of course. So I have like an hour and 15 minutes, if my memory serves me right, recording of Billy Mills explaining the entire day of the race, all of his emotions, everything that it meant to him. And you've got this recorded. It's my voice asking him questions. Billy's talking. You can hear my kids in the background because they're in the car. You can hear with the wives up front talking. And here I'm doing this impromptu recording. And as soon as I got the recording done, it's like I contact the State Historical Society of North Dakota and South Dakota. I said, you guys have to take this right away because I have a recording for whatever it's valued of Billy Mills that nobody else has, because nobody's interviewed Billy Mills from the back of a car between Fargo and Bismarck. and I sent it off, and they've archived it, and it was a fantastic. And then he came in, and we spent the day together, and we got pictures. And one of his plates went to the Olympics Museum, which was really cool, over in Morocco. I want to say it was Morocco, if my memory serves me right. So Billy is absolutely, and Pat is just, talk about, at his age, and he travels more than, anyone that I know. He's everywhere. He is everywhere. And I don't even think I could keep up with him. So Billy is a fantastic human being.
We brought him to Michigan a couple of years back, maybe 3 years ago now. And he was at 2 universities. And so I was actually spent like 3 days with Billy and Pat. And at the end, I said, Billy, can you be my uncle? Pat was in the back seat. She laughs. Everybody asks Billy that. Of course, he'll be your uncle.
And Billy will. He gives everyone his attention, and that's where I just, talk about generous person, right? Like Billy is always, if someone's listening, Billy's willing to tell a story and to try to reach out and try to pass on some lessons to us as young pups, right? Billy's always got some kind of word of wisdom that,
and that's
if you're listening.
Our traditional way is one generation takes care of the others, and it's Oren Lyons. I don't know if you ever captured him, but you need to if you haven't.
No,
he's like about 94 or 95 now, but just he's another one. He's another icon. And he told me, he said, Levi, he said the 80-year-olds take care of the 60-year-olds, the 60-year-olds take care of the 40-year-olds.
I love that.
40-year-olds, he said, and the 20-year-olds raise our babies. And I love that. The way he ended that is so true. And I think about that. A lot of my friends who are now gone, like Dennis Banks, I used to call him. I'd call him for advice and say, oh, man, I'm having a bad day, Dennis. And
we need to pay attention to our elders, not just in your, in your tradition. I'm talking about my tradition too, with my culture too. The elderly people, I was an oncology nurse, so I can remember many a night, late at night, helping, giving chemo to some elderly person and sitting there and just listening and taking in everything that they'd have to, sit in at their bedside, charting at their bedside instead of charting at the nurse's station. I just chart next to them, and they would just pass on stories or knowledge or just anything. We just have to listen to the people that are older than us because they've been here longer and they have so much to teach us.
That's very true.
And there's just so many young people don't take the time to listen to those who have been around. And the longer you're around, this, Levi, the longer you're around, the more you sound like an older person too, right? Like, you start sounding like the people that have been trying to give you advice all those years.
Yeah. And my mom taught us that. There were 7 of us, and she told us, my grandfather had a lot of land that he had to cut grass. He lived in a suburb of Grand Rapids. And so we'd go over there. There was no question where we were going to be on a Saturday. We were going to be over cutting Grandpa's lawn and working in his garden. And she would say to us, you will not have him with us always. And when he died, when I was 21 or maybe 22, it was one of the most significant losses I still miss the man. It's been many, many years ago, but check this out, Shane. He only had a 4th grade education, but I tell everybody he's the greatest man I ever met in my life. And I say that with all seriousness. And I have met some very important people in my life as a journalist, and even separate from that. But my grandfather, Levi White Pigeon, who I'm named after, was one of the greatest men ever.
Wow.
But my mother instilled it in us to take care of your grandparents, and you have to do what you have to do. But hey, listen, how did you embark on this journey to capture 1,000 Native Americans? Before we go, I want to hear that side.
Yeah, so it all started with Ernie LaPointe, the great grandson of Sitting Bull, lives in South Dakota. I had learned that Orlando Scott Goff had taken the first photograph of Sitting Bull. And then I, in 1881 here in Bismarck, which that was just fantastic to me. Like the blockhouse is where this building was, where his studio was. We know it was, I believe it was on the 3rd floor. I drive by that every day. So here I'm practicing wet play, don't know what I'm doing, trying to, this is back in 2014 or something like that. And I'm driving. I find out this history that there was this man that was in this city at that building, and he took the first ever photograph of Sitting Bull. You got to be kidding me. So then I read a Smithsonian article about Ernie, and I'm like, wow, the great grandson of Ernie's Sitting Bull is still around. And so I called, and I told the story. If there's a documentary about my work, if anyone's interested, it's Balkowitsch, the spelling of my name. It's on Amazon, so you can. It's an hour long. It won a little award and stuff. So if anyone's interested in hearing a little bit more about my story, and I tell this in there, and Ernie's in there, and it was just like, so I called him on the phone, and Ernie picked up, and I said, Ernie, this is Shane. You don't know me. Orlando Scott Goff took this photograph of your grandfather. He goes, yeah, I know the photograph. So I'm trying to tell Ernie something that he doesn't know, right? And Ernie already knows. So, well, I just learned about this last week, Ernie. I'm sorry, you've known your whole life, but I just learned about this last week. So here, you pretend like you know something, and you find out you really don't know much at all. And I said, I would love to take your photograph in the same process in the same city 135 years later. And Ernie said, I'll be up. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, he was up. Him and his wife, Sonia, came up. And that was my first. You have to understand, Levi, I had no Native American relations, friends, anyone in my life at that point. He was the first. Came into my studio. He taught me. He was teaching me from day one. Like when I went and saw Leonard, I had tobacco. Mm-hmm. And, I had tobacco. Why did I have tobacco? Right? Because Ernie told me, if you get in front of an elder and you're going to take their portrait, make sure you give them tobacco or give them something, right? Like this is respectful. So these are the things. When I was standing, I knew I was going to get my picture of Leonard at the end. So I was so busy focusing on the work. That's all I cared about. I could care less if I got anything else. All I got needed was those plates in my mind. But when it was all done and we were going to go to lunch at an hour or whatever, I knew Chad said, let's get a portrait of you and Mr. Peltier. And I told this story as well. I was standing over Leonard, and I'm like, I can't be taking this. I sit like this voice, and maybe it was Ernie, yelled in my head, you can't be standing over Leonard Peltier. That's disrespectful. So I immediately took a knee, and Leonard looks over at me. I love telling the story. Leonard looks over at me. Leonard puts his fist up like this, and he says, Shane, put your fist up. We're now brothers. And I put my fist up, and Chad Nodland captured that photograph. So right away, it was like, so I had no perception of your culture whatsoever. And Ernie LaPointe came in, and it was that photograph called Eternal Field with Ernie LaPointe, which was the first, what's most significant about this, that's the first ever portrait ever to make it into a museum. So it's that portrait that went into the State Historical Society. So all these other portraits, 861 of them, of Native Americans from all over the country, follow in Ernie's footsteps. And that's how I find myself on this path of photographing. And people ask me, are you going to stop? And so every 250 portraits, I make a book and I raise money for the American Indian College Fund. They ask me, are you going to stop at 1,000? And I can tell you right now, Levi, I do not plan on ever stopping. So I will take portraits. But it seemed at the time the series was only going to be 10 portraits. It was going to be Ernie's portrait. I had to find 9 other Native Americans. And I had no idea, how am I going to do that? Like Dakota Goodhouse was, he works at United Tribes here. He's a professor. He was portrait too. And it just snowballed. And then I'm booked out 7 months for my Friday sessions. So I've got 6 Native Americans coming in tomorrow here. And I had 4 Native Americans last Friday. So I'm booked out 7 months for my Friday sessions. And it's all been word of mouth and just friendships and talking. And, that's how Deb Hallen ends up here. That's how everyone, Billy Mills ends up here. That's how I get this opportunity, pinch me, right? Like to photograph Mr. Peltier.
What an honor. And speaking about raising money, I understand that because of health issues, we're going to have to help raise money, and certainly Native News Online, we can post links or whatever. So you're going to be involved with that as well, correct?
Yeah, when you post these pictures, and they've gotten thousands and thousands of likes and comments across social media, everyone's asking me, well, I want to print. And obviously you want to give a print because you make a portrait to share, right? I mean, I don't make these just so not to give people. So I've always known, and Dakota Goodhouse was, when I first started, people started asking me for prints. I said, Dakota, I'm not making any money at this. I'm a successful businessman. This is not about money for me. Where do I put this money if people buy prints? And then he always said the American Indian College Fund. So that's where I've always donated the money, any profits that I made from the series. So, but with Leonard, we talked, and I said, I could do the American Indian College Fund if you'd like. And then they mentioned that there were some medical bills that may be coming up for him. So it's like, okay, Leonard, that's what we're going to do. So I think that it's really good, right? Like if people can get a picture, and they can also help Leonard. And I mean, everyone wins.
I tell you what,
everyone wins.
This is a deal I can make with you as the Post for Native News editor. Is put it together. We'll do a story, and we can really push it hard.
I'll have them. They're approving them. Obviously, what's really I should tell you also about Leonard. So, what's really interesting, I told about these prints. So I'm going to do 2 prints of a cabinet card, which is a little cardstock that's the official size with rounded corners that they would have done 170 years ago. So I'm doing a trading card. Okay.
Nice.
And then Leonard asked me, he said, can you put the AIM logo on the back of the prints? And I said, of course, Leonard, I will put the AIM logo. So when you get your print, it will have the AIM logo on the back of the print. And he's never wavered from his convictions. He's never wavered from his innocence. And I don't mean to be, you talked earlier, I don't mean to be so philosophical or so, I think the word you said, mushy, but you spend the afternoon with the man, and you find yourself just having these emotions. Yeah. And I should say to your listeners, well, I really wanted to know Leonard more than just be a complete stranger. So I read his book, Prison Writings, from cover to cover before I had my time with him, because I needed to understand him a little bit more as a human being, right? Like we all knew the story. I knew the story, and people have been talking, and I know about the Free Leonard Peltier movement for a long time. But I really wanted, what better way than just to read the man's words and Prison Writings. And I said, Leonard, I read your book, and I said, I just got to be honest, I had to put it down. So I could only read so much of it. And then I had to put it down because it just upset me. Like it upset me. What he was detailing and what he went through. And I put me in a bad mood. But I've got to finish his book before I go see Leonard. I knew when I was going to see him on March 26th. So I pick it back up and I'd read it again. Not that the writing wasn't beautiful, not that the words weren't beautiful. It had nothing to do with that. It just has this emotion that I had reading these words and understanding the what he had gone through. I'm lost for words, sir.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way, and we have got to get active and get his story out. So, as we said, for future generations.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Hey, thank you so much, man. You and I could talk all day and all night.
Yeah, we could have went for hours.
We'll have to get you back on Native Bidaské, and someday maybe I'll be part of that 1,000.
I've already invited you up, Levi. So you just have to come to Bismarck, make the journey, and we'll spend an afternoon together.
That'd be wonderful.
We'll get a portrait for the Historical Society and for your family.
Okay, thank you. And to our viewers, we've been talking to Shane Balkowitsch, and he has on a journey to do photography. Take 1,000 different Native Americans, called Northern Plains Native Americans, a modern wet plate perspective. So look them up online and spread the word. We're looking forward to seeing the success and help raise money for Leonard Peltier's health needs. And to our viewers, we'll be back next week with another Native Bidaské. And as I like to tell you every week, young ones take care of those elders, and the elders take care of your young ones. We're all in this together, preserved for 7 generations. We at Native News Online, our motto is warrior journalism, defending tribal sovereignty, and it's needed more now more than ever before. Warrior journalism, defending tribal sovereignty. See you next week.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chimi Gwech.